have a beautiful mind. We love the depth of wisdom you effortlessly reflect and how you consistently shine a bright light through your art. Could you please share some highlights on how you began your journey as a creative writer?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I think that I expressed an interest in the literary world from a really young age. I got really obsessed with the Goosebumps series by R.L. Stein. I'm not sure if any of you have read it, but I spent a lot of nights just getting lost in those books. And I remember being in such awe of the writing and wondering how on earth one imagination could fit so many things. It always made me wonder what it would be like to write something like that. Then I think maybe in the fifth or sixth grade of junior school, I must have been about 10 years old. We were asked to write a poem in class about the tsunami that hit Indonesia at the time. I didn't really think much of it. I wrote the poem, but when my teacher read what I had written, she really made a point to tell me how impressed she was. She called my parents to tell them that I had a real knack for writing. And I think that moment was the catalyst for me diving deeper into it. It's funny because I've been trying to understand how these things develop in people in general. Like, do you choose your vocation or does your vocation ultimately choose you? And I guess moments like that make me feel like it chose me. And then I just wrote short stories, poetry, even raps throughout school. And then I continued that into university. I took on the project of writing a novel, which I'm still doing. And yeah, eventually I started Mind Glyphics, and here we are.
All right, that's really beautiful and lovely. We are great to have you on board this special issue with the theme "The Art of Christmas." Do you celebrate Christmas, and what's your most memorable moment in this holiday season?
Yeah, I do celebrate Christmas. Yeah. In terms of a memorable moment for this holiday season, I'm not sure if there is one memorable moment, but I guess it's
Well,
maybe only because I like to look at it in the wider sense. You know, whether you celebrate Christmas or not, there's a certain warm feeling that inevitably comes along this time of year. And this feeling of maybe connecting with people, of belonging, of loving, and of course of eating until there's no space left in your stomach. So to me, I think Christmas is less about moments and more about that feeling. And that's the memorable part for me.
well, you're so much of a person of nature. What was growing up like for you?
So I'm not sure if you guys know this, but I'm from a small Greek island in the Mediterranean called Cyprus.
Well,
And growing up there was like growing up in paradise. There's sun pretty much the whole year round. Distances are really short. People are really tight knit. So are families. Again, the food is awesome. Uh, and growing up there, I spent a lot of time doing extracurriculars, things like piano lessons, swimming, football. At the time, they sort of felt a little bit more like a chore or an obligation. But the truth is, they really did offer me plenty of avenues to explore in the maybe the mental, the physical, and the creative sense. And it cast a wide net and developed me in ways that I think are still important to me to this day. So overall, I had a great childhood. Really, really enjoyed growing up in Cyprus, and we'll probably end up going back there one day.
well, that's beautiful. I look forward to going to Greece someday. Yeah, I have a friend from there. I don't know if you know DJ Nikito. He's
Who's that?
German. So he's Greek, but he stays in Germany.
I'm not sure that I do.
Nicholas Dolgiakis.
Nicholas Tilgakis. No, I don't think so.
Oh, okay. All right. As the editor in chief at Untwine Me USA, featuring art, poetry, and photos, can you share more about the AO Inspiring platform, its goals for impact, and any other highlights you would like to share? Also, what do you consider most fulfilling about your creative journey as a writer and editor?
Yeah, I think the platform, so Untwine Me USA, is part of the Untwine Me network, which I've had the pleasure of being a part of for a couple of years. I think it's a wonderful project. It aims to spotlight voices within the online community and give them more of a platform to be heard. There are features on each of the Untwine Me pages. There are live readings, which also give our editors the opportunity to read out and express themselves creatively in the process. And I think it's all really part of a node of networks which sort of foster creativity and encourage people to keep doing beautiful things, in a space that can sometimes feel a bit daunting. So I think the most fulfilling part of the journey is just that, to express myself creatively, to challenge myself into doing new things that will help me evolve as a writer and a person, and then to help others to do the same, which is obviously a really, really rewarding part of the journey.
Well, okay. One of your most recent piece reads these striking lines: "Her own little pocket of paradise." I guess some night owls aren't trying to escape. Maybe they just don't want to miss a thing. Although this is an untitled piece, it's a beautiful one. Could you share the inspiration behind it?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Thank
I
you.
was on an island called Nusa Penida in Indonesia a couple of months ago. My
Okay.
girlfriend and I were staying in a treehouse, which had a loft at the top. It had a net you could lie on to overlook the jungle. And you could see the ocean in the distance. Just she just lay there, and I was just looking at her, and I was looking, into the distance, and just seeing her there as the sun came up made me think of that final line. I think that people who often like to stay up at night, they sometimes attract a bit of stigma, but who knows? Maybe sometimes staying up into the night isn't about escaping, it's about soaking in as much beauty as you can. And that's where the idea came from.
Before Latifa continues, I'd like to ask a question. Are you there? All right. I noticed that you do not really like to put a title to your work. Is it like a personal thing, or just how you flow more?
Um, I think it's just I want people to look at that picture, and then I don't want to put a title in someone's head. I want them just to think about the thought. The picture is almost the title itself. That
Yeah.
being said, for my own reference, I put a couple of hashtags in the first comment under each picture, and the first hashtag tends to be my version of a title, even though I don't really advertise that. So it's maybe a little Easter egg for me.
Yeah. Yeah, because I feel like I'm a poet too and a writer. Sometimes I struggle with even writing my titles, and I focus so much on what title do I put on this, than sometimes even distracts you from even the content, right? So I think I'm going to
Yeah,
learn that. I'm
yeah.
going to
The
learn.
way the way I sort of write mindoglyphics in general is it's almost like a pseudo diary. All the pictures are pictures that I've taken myself, across my travels and wherever I've been. And even though maybe what is written in the text is not, directly related to what I'm going through, it's almost like a timestamp for me. And so I like to think of it more as just these flashing memories in my head of where I was at the time, where my mind was at the time. And then, of course, as all art, it's open to interpretation.
Okay. Thank you. Like I said, I'm going to learn that from you sincerely. So we learn every day, right? I focus on sometimes I feel like I even get stuck. I get this writer's block when I'm trying to create a title that would match. Because I feel like sometimes the title do not really express how much how I want it to like picture what I'm writing. So yeah, sometimes it can just be untitled and we just go that way. There was a time I even wrote a piece and the title of the piece was untitled. So
Perfect.
that's why that struck
Yeah,
me, and I
it's
decided to.
it's uh, it's sometimes tough to distill, a big piece into just one or two words. And
Yeah,
sometimes that does the piece a disservice. So I completely understand what you're coming from there.
yeah. All right, please go on, Latifa.
Yeah, thank you, Eden. Um, we see you as a brain box of inspiration in the creative industry and beyond. We love how most of your views align with our brand's vision and mission. On commercial success for writers, you shared some highlights on balancing between personal writing and paying attention to the market. Please share more on this and quick tips for creative who want to do their art full time. What's your advice for them?
Yeah. I think the first thing in general when creating is to assess what your goals are going to be. Do you create simply and solely as a means of artistic expression, or are you focused on extracting maybe a financial benefit? And as you said, doing the art full time, because there's nothing wrong with any of those, and they aren't mutually exclusive. But understanding where you lean is important. And if we take writing, for example, if you write exactly what you want to write with no regard for a target audience, you might narrow your appeal. And obviously, if you write what you think people will eat up without paying much attention or much regard to what you want, you might end up hating the process, and it'll seem just like another job you need to get through. It sort of defeats the purpose for me, I think. So maybe the key is to strike a balance between the two, keeping an ear to the ground, paying attention to the trends of the market, how people respond to your different posts if you're on social media, for example, and then going from there. So commercial success is important because it'll open more doors for you to explore yourself creatively. But if you sort of abandon authenticity in that pursuit, then maybe your interest in creating and the quality of your art, for that matter, might wane. So I think it's about paying attention, collecting the data, being entrepreneurial in that sense, but also maintaining authenticity, because I think that's one of the key reasons for success in writing. Writers who are authentic, I think that translates across in all art forms.
Okay. Do you feel creatives in developed countries, though it's a popular perception, but do you feel creatives in developed countries are advantaged than those in developing countries?
I think that's a very interesting question, first and foremost. And I think there's a couple of facets to it. Obviously, if we take writing as an example again, creatives in developed countries will likely have more access to, let's say, literary agents, publishers, and vessels which can push their work further into the mainstream. There's also arguably, a linguistic advantage due to English being spoken more prominently in these developed countries. Maybe an argument to also be made for access to a more robust form of education from the get-go. That being said, I think the internet has definitely made the gap smaller. The fact that people can access books, information, or even connect with other people online has definitely made things more even in the wider sense. So I think there's obviously still plenty of room for improvement, but things like this take time, and it feels like we're at least on the right track.
Okay, lovely. As creatives, we understand the high tendencies of getting stressed out, even while pursuing our passion. There are days when even depression may creep in, or just the inexplicable feeling of overwhelmingness. Do you have any relatable experience to this? And if so, how are you able to manage and thrive beyond phases like this? Any quick tips on mental health for creatives?
Yeah. I think everyone will definitely experience that at one point or another. It's completely natural, and obviously it might differ from individual to individual in the sense of the extent to which they feel or experience it. But for me, I think the way I try to combat it is by looking for what I like to call guaranteed wins during my day. So, for example, exercise is a big one for me, because no matter how tough my day has been, I always feel like I've achieved something if I manage to exercise. Even other things that seem really, really small or unimportant, like making your bed in the morning, I think it puts your subconscious in the right frame of mind. The mindset of, I take care of myself, I can trust myself. And that then snowballs into bigger things. And so the understanding that everything creates a sort of feedback loop can allow you to make positive changes, which eventually lead you where you want to be. I also think that leaning on community is really important. Obviously, on Instagram, there's a really tight-knit community for writers, for creatives. I think initiatives like yours, Mental Health for Creatives, allow people to maybe get support where they otherwise wouldn't have had some, get more insight into how other people are feeling, understanding that they're not alone in feeling these feelings. And then finally, I also think that people should be a little bit easier on themselves. I feel like if I can't write one day, maybe I'll edit. And if I can't edit, maybe I'll read or even take some time off. I think recovery is just as important as the work itself. There's this quote I always ring back to. It's from House of Cards, the series. I'm not sure if anyone has seen it, but it goes something like, there's only one way to devour a whale, and that's one bite at a time. So I think trusting the process, staying the course, trying to force your own luck at times, and yeah, I think things will eventually fall into place.
Yeah, speaking of mental health for creatives, there's something I think it's called writer's block. And I believe a lot of creative writers have problems like this. What would you prefer a solution or possible solutions when a writer has writer's block?
I think the key for me, at least when I have writer's block, is taking a step back. If I just stay on top of my laptop, stare at the screen and try to come up with something, I think it's really not the way to approach it. I think taking a step back, doing other activities, going for walks, again, going into the exercise, allowing your mind to sort of rest, even though subconsciously you're probably still looking for the answer. And it'll eventually probably come at a time where you least expect it. I think I do some of my best thinking right before I go to bed. So as soon as I turn the light off, I get into bed, that's when the thoughts start coming. And it's not as if I try to, solve, let's say, the problems of the day with respect to the writer's block, but it just seems to happen that way. So not being afraid to take a step back is the first one. I think the second one is something that I found in my own writing to be a bit of a challenge, not being afraid to delete things and go back. Sometimes maybe you can write yourself into a corner, and then maybe the reason you have writer's block is because there's no real way out of that corner. So taking a step back again, deleting things that might not work could maybe open up new routes and new avenues for you to sort of explore.
Yeah, I key into what you just said. Balancing work time and rest time is a struggle for many creatives. Please share a few tips on how you try to balance work time, rest time, and family time.
Yeah, I think again on this one, understanding that it's all part of a cohesive effort to making you the best version of yourself. So understanding that the importance of, rest time, family time, and work time, working collectively is key. Because if you're just working the entire time, it's not really sustainable as a long-term strategy. So the way I do it is I like to split my week. Monday until Friday are sort of days where I get into the nitty gritty of the work I need to do. I try to develop my mind. I take care of my body. I eat healthy. And then weekends are for sort of letting loose, relaxing, allowing myself to decompress, which, obviously allows me to strike a balance between working and relaxing. Also gives me a bit of a reward for the work I've been doing during the week, allows me to look forward to things during the weekend. So I think for me, that's the system that I've found to work the best. And it's also a clean way to split it, because I know that on Monday, so Monday's here, okay, today is the day where I'm gonna, sit down and concentrate and work. Whereas on Saturday, I just know that I'm relaxing, I can do whatever I want. So yeah, that's the way I've sort of worked around this.
Yeah, it's actually good to have a timetable or plan for activities, because a lot of creatives get burnout for poor planning or
Yeah,
too much work done. Okay, you shared some powerful quotes on how many creatives neglect the spiritual nature of their craft and create for fake or notoriety. We cannot agree less. Also, you left a rhetorical question. How about we practice creating just for the sake of it? Can you share some more on this insights?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think this one sort of follows on from what we were discussing earlier about commercial success and authenticity. I think it's very easy, especially when you delve deeper into the commercial side of creating or of craft, that you can very easily go for what sells as opposed to what is at your core the authentic way you want to express yourself. So that piece was sort of almost a challenge of going back to the fundamentals, remembering why you do this in and of itself. So at the moment, I'm writing a book, and obviously writing this book, it's a very long, arduous process. And sometimes it's very easy to just focus on, okay, I want this to be a commercial success. I want to do well. I want this to open doors for me, in that sense. But at its core, you need to fall in love with the process. You need to love the art itself. And so creating just for the sake of it is almost a reminder, maybe to myself and then to any other artist to whom that might relate, to just remember why you started in the first place. You started because you love the art form, not for the commercial success. And if that comes along afterwards, then that would be fantastic. But the key is to create just for the sake of it.
Yeah, I can to what you just said, though realistically, some people would go for the latter due to their circumstance or environment. As we said, most creatives are less opportuned or less at advantage of those in developed countries. However, what you said is actually the right thing. It's what should be. But hey, what does
Can I just
success mean
add
to you?
something? Latifa,
Okay,
Latifa. Yeah, please. I just wanted
yeah,
to add something, right?
sure, sure.
Yeah, yeah. So I feel like regardless of like this should not the background you are coming from a developing country or from a developed country, it should not be like a criteria right here. Because I get what George is saying about knowing your core. Like sometimes we lose ourselves in the process of trying to get the money and get the fame and get everything, right? So because so many people are going to listen to this right now, and I don't want them to have like a divided mind. What we stand for right now is the fact that stick to your core. So we are already fighting for you to, like as an organization, we're already fighting for creatives to like be able to aim from doing what they love. So we are not saying that is bad. We're not saying earning money is bad, but we are saying that the money should not be actually the priority. But once you are doing something with your passion, once you are doing something with your passion and your heart is into it, everything will gradually fall in place, right? Everything would gradually come together. It's just like a puzzle. At the beginning, no foundation looks beautiful at the beginning compared to the product or the mansion or the house that it eventually turns out to. So I feel like, yeah, just go for your passion, go for that thing that made you start. Every writer or every creative has a message. Stick to your
Yeah.
message, stick for and yeah, so George, in fact, like I personally wrote that question because we have like some basic questions we ask all creatives. But when I went to your page and I saw that particular one, I was like, we need to like talk a little about this because this is something that is a little controversial and sometimes
Yeah.
we also like to sweep it under the cover to say, let's just do things anyhow. So yeah, thank you for that insight, George.
Yeah.
Please go on. Latifa.
Just to add to that,
Yeah, thank
I think that there's nothing wrong with seeking commercial success from craft or from creative, endeavors. I think that, as I said before, those aren't mutually exclusive. You can create and have a passion for creating whilst seeking commercial success. I think, as you said, the point is to just not lose sight of your love for the craft itself in pursuit of commercial success, because it's very easy for the craft and the passion to just morph into another job. And I think for the most part, people start at least within this creative universe, if you will, because they love doing it. And then obviously being able to attain commercial success from it is is a dream for a lot of people. So yeah, I think it's just a reminder to remember that you love the art form itself as well as the commercial
Yeah.
benefits.
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you, George. Thank you, Eden, for that insight. Okay. George, what does success mean to you? What's your definition of success?
That is a tough question, to be honest. I think there's many angles you can go about it, but I guess success is to for me to pursue my goals, to be able to evolve consistently, and to ultimately leave a mark that I can look back on and be happy with. I think that in the creative sense, it's being able to look at my body of work when when things are said and done, and be happy that I gave it my all, and be happy with the final product and the way I expressed my feelings or my experiences at the time. I think in the wider sense, it's about forming good and positive relationships and meaningful relationships with people that obviously can go on until the end of our time here. And I think at its core, it's about being happy and finding happiness within, maybe first and foremost, and then maybe extending that happiness outward.
Okay, that's beautiful. Okay, let's go a little bit poetic. If poetry is a rainbow color and you have a choice of color in that palette, what color would that be and why?
Well, red is my
And
favorite color, so it would probably be a red.
yeah,
Um,
red. Why red?
I just have a real affinity for that color. I've always had one. I feel like it just reminds me of passion, of just this burning fire inside. It's almost like in the artistic sense, I guess, it's almost like art happens in spite of you with red. It's like there's some monster inside that rushes out regardless of whether you want it to or not. And I like that idea in the artistic sense.
Yeah, what I if I may ask personally, what grade or shade of red?
Hmm. Yeah, let's think.
Great.
No, I think the way I think about it is maybe more of a vermilion type color, a mix of red and orange, somewhere in the middle of that. That's sort of where I think about it.
Well, that's lovely. But anyways, I think this part goes to Eden. Usually after the interview, we collect 1 minute or less than 1 minute video from our interviewees, which we share as a single documentary during our anniversary. I don't know if it's something you could do now or you want to do it later, though we could do it now. Just saying
I'm happy to
shout
do it
out to
now.
Hello Icon, happy and
Okay.
yeah, so I think Eden will talk more on that. Should explain
Yeah,
that better to you.
yeah. Thank you so much, Latifa. Before we move to the shout out, I think there's a question we skipped, and I think that's like one of the most important questions. So, please, George, what does art mean to you?
Yeah, I think when you boil down to it, art is probably the rawest form of what it means to be human. In
Mm.
a cultural, historical, psychological sense, art has sort of been at the forefront of the human species since we could paint on cave walls. So to be a creative, I think, is to exercise your truest form as a human
Mm.
being, to do what you were always meant to do. Because obviously, even in the past, creativity, ingenuity is what has ultimately led us to where we are here. So being able to exercise that in an art form, touching people with that, finding those points of connection, those similarities, or even, points of contention, I think it's the truest means of self-expression.
Thank you so much.